Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with Lisa Buckingham. For more than 12 years, Lisa served as the Executive Vice President and Chief People, Place, and Brand Officer of Lincoln Financial Group, a company that is ranked in the top 25 of total assets on the Fortune 500 list. Lisa served on the board of Lincoln Life and Annuity Company and currently serves as a member of the Board of Advisors for Succeed Smart. She is also one of the 4 co-founders of P+W Connect, an amazing organization that brought companies together to work in tandem to help employees find employment opportunities during the pandemic. For these efforts and her outstanding career success, Lisa was named the Distinguished Executive by the Academy of Management in 2021. Thank you very much for coming down. We always love having you here.
It's so nice to be here. Beautiful day, too.
It always is here in Columbia. Yeah.
Except dinner last night when it was raining.
It wasn't raining on us.
That's true. Good point.
So you are the Executive Vice President and Chief People, Place, and Brand Officer for Lincoln Financial.
I was.
Can you share a little bit about what it means to have all of those things?
Yeah, I might have 2 answers. So my answer would be pre-COVID and post-COVID. Pre-COVID, it was an opportunity to really bring so much of the brand together to help drive the employee value proposition. From a place perspective, obviously, we were always looking at how do you optimize the work experience for our employees. So first off, that was always happening. Well, then this little thing called COVID shows up and everything changed. And from that perspective, in those areas, so you have health and safety, you have real estate, you have business continuity, you have your unbelievable people, your distribution systems, you have your people partners from the outside, your financial partners. And what I would say is that it was really an opportunity to pivot quickly, look through the lens of how can we be as productive as we possibly could be, keeping our employees health and safe, the challenge of returning to work from a distribution for a client side was pushed way sooner than there's the return in the hybrid work. So it was really interesting, especially in the end of 2020 and getting into Q1 of 2021, of really what does it look like? Who needs to go back? Who should we deem fully remote? Who should go back in a hybrid flex situation from 2 to 3 days a week? Or, so there were two groups. Who would go back 2 days a week? Who would go back 3 days a week? Then people would want to understand why. Now, what I would say to you as you look at that, how do you make sure that you're continuing to build innovation, collaboration, when you have this disparate workforce? So ensuring that our leaders were communicating properly in one-on-ones, virtually, how do you do team building? How do you do those collaborative efforts? And I have to say, it really, I think having people, place, and brand, it was exhausting. Trust me, there's no, anything about that because you're owning the portfolio. But at the same time, you had this really cool opportunity with your business partners to say, what should this look like in the future? And guess what? The employees had a major voice in all of that too.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So, but one, just to start with, is that an advertisement that more companies should have place and brand, especially underneath or within the HR unit? Is there a value proposition there? You're the only one I know that it's done.
Yeah, my answer would be no. Okay. I think especially during crisis time, it's just so much, right? You're having to focus on the people and talent strategy, you're focusing on the real estate strategy, you're focusing on the safety strategy. I think that needs to be smoothed out with within other responsibilities. And when you think about brand, even during COVID, we were launching a brand new brand campaign, the 3rd one under my responsibilities. And it actually, after I retired, it did come to life, and it's beautiful and, of course, very human. But I think that in today's environment and what we're looking at from what does hybrid look like, what does it mean, where do people go to work, where do people go to learn, where are they going to innovate, where are they going to collaborate, where are they going to just team build. You can partner with real estate, you can partner with aviation and health and safety and business continuity. Business continuity is for everybody, health and safety is for everyone. I would just say it's a tough portfolio during a crisis time.
You had a really unique view of what was going on with that. So what is a way that organizations should think about, especially as people are more virtual or otherwise, to help them create a strong team or some of the other things you mentioned?
The Delta variant's not helping us in any ways right now. So if I'm giving you a current answer, we're going to have to find ways to do it hyper safely as we're doing it here and all the COVID protocols. I think from that perspective, we can't lose those opportunities, because when you're thinking about culture, everybody can be really proud of where they work and that they have the flexibility to have a hybrid working relationship. But bringing people together, walking down the hall and seeing somebody and saying, I have this idea, those are the areas that companies are going to have to find out within their culture. How does that look? How does that work? Maybe it's a once a month get together in a large area where you can meet outside and have outside events. Is it, being really intentional online from the standpoint of everybody's cameras on, everybody's, contributing. There's so many great collaborative tools out there. There's so much polling that you can do to bring things together. Anthony, I just think that we can't get too comfortable all being remote from that standpoint. Now, that doesn't mean that every single role can't be remote. There's some roles that are more productive that way. And there's days that companies should just give the employees that opportunity and the trust that they're getting their work done, that they can't come to the office. So this is a new world. We're all learning the new rules, and COVID's going to help drive that from the standpoint. But I think that we all, as HR professionals, need to keep thinking innovatively about how can we ensure that we're building our employees, that they feel that they're meeting all the right people. Our client-facing employees are able to go and successfully interact. And let's not forget, have fun and build relationships. There's new employees at thousands of companies that have never met their manager in person. So hopefully that manager is being very intentional, and you'll hear me say that word a lot over the next few hours, that we have to be intentional of getting to know who you are, what works, what's not working, how can I help you more? And technology is game changing, but human relationship is really how it's going to happen.
So can you talk more about really that last bit? But based on the idea that I know you've said that actually at Lincoln, people were even more productive when you first let them start working from home. And some of that, I think, came from the remarkable trust you had with all of your employees. Mm-hmm. So how do you keep that culture, though, when people are much more remote all the time?
Well, and the balance, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll answer it in two ways. First, many people would say we're living at work now, so they don't know when the off button should happen. If you look at Portugal right now, they're fining companies that call their employees after work hours, and there's things like that. I think that you have to create your boundaries as an employee around that, but meeting the productivity and really, engaging in the right team activities, engaging in the client activities, being proactive. I think more employees were able to meet much more senior leaders, even for 30 minutes, because somebody wasn't traveling all day, right? So these are the things that I think we need to find a way to celebrate and make sure that folks feel really part of the organization that they're working in, having fun, learning. I think online learning is just going to take off even more than it already was. I think that, performance management, are the right promotions happening because people aren't all getting together, and maybe just by happenstance you meet somebody and they're like, wait, I'd love you to join my team. How do we fix that? So I think that using Slack, using Skype, using WebEx, all these different areas, the collaborative tools have to be really leveraged. and finding ways. Even Skype messaging was game changing. I spoke with employees all the time that I would have never had the opportunity to. Or they would just say, can we have coffee this morning virtually? Of course, of course. So I think holding managers accountable, I think managers' responsibilities are going to get higher in this, because it's not just talent assessment, it's not, work assessment, it's feedback, it's really, how do I help drive you to what you want? And it's a two-way conversation, but at the end of the day, I just really think that we have to find ways to make sure that it's very intentional in career mapping, career development. I think that the cool thing in all of this is on the talent side, maybe we're changing some of the job specs and reducing certain, you have to have 10 years here or that, and that gets all into, the conversation around DE&I, which would love to talk about. But I just think we have to think differently, and managers are going to have to be better managers and leaders in the future.
So does that mean we need to be training these managers certainly differently within the organization, but maybe even in education, like MBA programs need to change? And
I do.
Okay.
I think that there needs to be a lot of change, and I think that, coming out of an organization that was deeply finance acumen and actuarial talent, amazing human beings, and I don't know that every person's DNA is like to go be super social or just like reach out and ask how somebody's doing. But maybe there's better or different check-ins on work product, on process. How does this look? Help us define what the hybrid workforce looks like. What do you want? There's Anthony, there's a group of people who say, I don't want to work at home, but you've deemed me hybrid or remote. I don't want to do that. So you darn well better have a plan for those people, because they're going to go somewhere else. Everybody's calling it the great resignation, but I'm calling it the great choice for an employee.
So say more about that. I was going to ask you, do you believe that there is such a thing as a great resignation? It sounds like no, there is something else going on.
Yeah, so I would say no. I think it's that people are waking up and deciding what their real priorities are. I think everybody obviously needs to earn a living and take care of their life and their family and have benefits and things like that. But I think that this is the great choice time, and it is, people are going to pursue where they feel they can be themselves, that there's the purpose, that the culture's there, that it's a diverse organization, but that they can grow and learn, and maybe it's not so stringent on you need to be in the office on these days. There's some jobs that you do have to be in an office, but I think it's going to be the great choice of an employee. And you darn well better deliver as that employee if you're operating that way, by the way.
So there's going to be this big sorting, you think. So it's not so much that everyone's leaving the workforce, it's that they're now meandering around trying to figure out what's the best fit for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's just go. You said you wanted to talk about D&I. What would you like to talk about D&I?
Yeah, if you think about just the events with all the social injustices, and, of course, I think that George Floyd needs to be honored from the standpoint of his murder and death absolutely created a lot more conversations than were ever really happening in DE&I. I think that there's more investment and focus in the United States on DE&I. I think that really, really good organizations are looking at how do we recruit more diverse employees from the standpoint of, do we need to look differently at our job specs? Are we too stringent on our requirements? Do we have a diverse culture? Are we embracing of diversity? Do we have the right BRGs? Are we having the right level of conversations? I was just on a panel on Monday, and we were talking about inclusivity in companies and what does that mean? And the things that I could lean into, or somebody better said it, throw myself on the table rather than just lean in, was really around, listening tours and understanding. And the BRGs have been phenomenal, but doing pulse surveys, doing engagement surveys, reading that data, finding out how people are feeling, the listening tours were really life-changing for me, because sometimes we don't even know the impact we have on people without them telling us. The unconscious bias that's out there, I think that everybody's on this amazing and perfect learning curve from the standpoint of trying to make sure that we are creating the right cultures.
So do you believe organizations are really, that this wasn't just a little blip, that we are really moving in a positive direction about this issue?
I do. I hope it's not just a moment in time. I hope to see, long-term progress. Seeing boards being way active in this is really, really important. I think that CEO tone from the top, and it cannot be an HR issue, right? And chief diversity officers will tell you that they're the first ones that have felt the amazing pressure. I think that, for folks listening to our conversation, when they look at their organizational investment in DE&I, is that still too low? Are people fighting for investment there? Are they looking strategically at historically Black universities, or really going super different on their pipeline building? Those are the challenges that we all have to have. And this isn't a competition. This is really changing the demographics of a workforce. And, the mindsets of board, the mindsets of senior leadership, the mindsets of employees. Our employees need to feel like they're being listened to at the same time. That doesn't mean that we're taking focus off of anything else, but this is a time and an opportunity that, we have the opportunity to make the difference, and it's on us to make those differences. Open doors for one or two people, bring people along. Not everybody has every single skill for every job. I know I didn't have every skill or experience for every job that I held, and guess what? I shined, and I had a great time, and I had fun.
So how does this fit in with, so we talked a little bit actually yesterday about whether organizations were really, really committed and serious to this idea of a broader stakeholder view rather than it being purely shareholder driven.
Yeah.
So if companies are we really moving in that kind of direction? And this is kind of what I think the DE&I stuff requires, right? We're going to say we're going to put a lot of money in, we're going to really invest in people that maybe we wouldn't have given chances to in the past. And we believe this is going to work out in the end, but in the short term, that may not necessarily translate into shareholder returns. So are boards really committed to this?
I'm hearing they are. I think that they are, and I'll show some statistics in a bit, but I'm hearing that they want to see more. They want to see more of the talent slates, and they want to evaluate their senior executives on their diversity of their talent slates. I think that you'll see a lot more from the standpoint of disclosures coming. I don't know what it's going to look like. If you think about the past 5 years, many of the leading global organizations have done an amazing job on talent or human capital reports and really dug into their D&I results. At Lincoln, we had that in our CSR report. We were building a talent report. And we shouldn't hide away from those numbers, because that's where more public policy will end up coming in and things like that. And what you want to do is first own it to your workforce, and your employees need to know what we really look like and why we look like this. And getting down to referral programs, tapping into different markets. Our shareholders, our business partners, and our outside affiliates, they want to see a different organization. So I am very hopeful.
So another challenge, or maybe it's an opportunity. So you described it as an opportunity, that being as the workforce is remote, or we allow that kind of flexibility, then perhaps that allows us to tap into people's skills we might not have seen before, et cetera. But we also hear a lot of stories about how remote workers have an even harder time getting acclimated to a new company. And that's even harder for many of the groups that were disparate treated in the past.
Yeah, well, this is a really tough one, because I think that this is, from a standpoint of onboarding, re-recruiting for people inside, or reboarding is a term I heard a couple of weeks ago, which I love, because people are doing all of that. I think that from an onboarding perspective, the intentionality of the organizations are going to be have to be higher. you can use beautiful technology to onboard people and, open enrollment for your health care and, signing up for all of these different things. But we cannot lose the human and human resources and that human interaction of the leadership to these new employees. And this is where I get to maybe once a month, you bring all new hires to one location safely. And I don't know what that looks like for most organizations, but could be outside if it was in a warm climate. Do team building, talk about the values of the organization, talk about the competencies, talk about how you get promoted, how you get evaluated. So I think onboarding is going to be huge. And I also think that the feedback from new hires is going to be essential so we can keep pivoting on making it better. And if we're not interested in hearing from them, we're not going to win.
So somewhat related, you were part of a quartet of CHROs who won a very prestigious award this year from the Academy of Management for a lifetime of greatness in the field.
And thank you.
Can you describe a little bit about what that program was and why it's so valuable and how the four of you even came up with doing it?
It'd be my honor, and I hope I don't get emotional. So it's called People Plus Work Connect, and it was during a CHRO forum that we had a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, it was a Accenture meeting, and Ellen Shook, who's the Chief HR Officer and Leadership Officer, Christy Pambianchi, who's now at Intel, Pat Waters, who is now at Procure, and myself when I was at Lincoln. We hung up from this more global call, and we were just talking about what is really going on. And we saw, I think, unemployment rate at the time was a little bit over 13% in the US. And we were like, if you look to your left, you look to your right, your neighbors, somebody's losing their house, their apartment, people are losing their jobs left and right. What can we do? So it was a rallying call. So within 48 hours, we had a design team that worked with us to build a platform, and Accenture, of course, was the amazing rock star to fund this. And we thought that we were just going to have like a quick conference call with people to talk about what we were thinking about a weekend. Well, we had over 1,000 employers, CHROs, and talent acquisition angels, I call them right now, on the call. And we really wanted to find ways to help augment where companies had openings in their industries and where people had been displaced. So it was either seasonal work or temporary work or permanent work. So I think our high point, we had about 546,000 opportunities, so either available talent or available openings. And it's still live and well. We have, we were bringing in a next-gen group of individuals that are helping us take it to the next level and really decide what it looks like. But what we did was we created a knowledge net within the infrastructure, and it was really benefits, advice, comp advice of people that would maybe be stopping working or furloughed. And we had amazing engagement from people. And the HR folks around the world wanted to help get people together. And we did not track the number of people that we placed, or that was not why we did this. We did this, it was a compassionate project to get people back to work. And I think I've built some of my best friends and learned from them so much, and we lean in on each other all the time. And it's still alive and well. So it's called People Plus Work Connect.
So you really did it to help people at a time when so many people were losing their job.
Yes.
But it sounds like this is also something that can really help with this matching idea that you talked about. Helping people go from find the organization that's the best fit for them.
I think so, for the ones that are on the platform, but we'll always take more people on the platform. So it's awesome. And we're working on what does the next gen of this look like. And I think because, and we called it the Great Resignation, but I'm calling it the Great Choice opportunity. So I think that maybe employees that might be leaving an organization not on their own can really take the time to say what's next for them. And the partnership is amazing. And again, we're not a search firm. The companies lead the interactions on either side, and incredibly proud. It's a pretty cool thing. And it was just like out of absolute compassion and care that it happened. And there were many tears, and we built something fairly quickly.
And that was highly impactful for people that truly needed it.
Yeah.
That's very, very special. The last question I want to ask you about is because you are so thoughtful about the future of HR and its role in the organization, how it can help drive business success. Can you talk a little bit about what the partnership, if there should be one, should be between organizations and academic institutions, research institutions, colleges?
Okay, so this is really, really important in my opinion. If we're not lifelong learners and trying to see what other companies are doing, what research is showing, that will give us, if we're not doing that, then we're being lazy. Okay, first off, I think that we just need to be information indulgent all the time. I think it helps us build our business case for different investments, and data is king, as we all know. And from my perspective, from a relationship, certainly like with CES, I would tell you, and University of South Carolina, from the standpoint of we have this opportunity not only to have the research, but we meet these amazing students who can be the future. So from my perspective, we're missing the mark if we're not doing that. And you can also help us define the future of HR, because you're giving us research that says, look, we've studied these 100 of companies or 200 companies, and this is what's already happening. And it can give you an opportunity to take that data and then customize it to work for your organization. And super valuable, super valuable.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for spending time with us and joining us in Columbia again. As I said, we always love having you come down.
Oh, it's super to be here. I appreciate the time, really do.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today, Lisa Buckingham, formerly of the Lincoln Financial Group, shared her views regarding some of the unique challenges that exist for HR in the financial services industry. She also described her views regarding the responsibilities of corporations and leaders to drive employee success. As we see, once again, HR leaders must be creative, courageous, and understand the strategic goals of the organization. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.